I was $120,000 in debt. I was forced to sell my house. I had no idea what I was doing in business. One thing I learned about in business is you don't have to be good at everything. However, you need to have somebody that can be good at those things you're not good at. I believe that being from the hood is a superpower because it teaches you, like, man, you know what? We've been through a lot.
When it comes to desire, when it comes to discipline, how were you able to merge the two into actionable steps?
My martial arts instructor, Grandmaster Eugene David Floyd, he just gave us this mindset when I was really young. Is like, he would say the day before the tournament, I want you to make space for your first place trophy. When you go get ready to compete, look at the person and think in your head, man, you don't belong here with me. What is it gonna take to get to that first place trophy? I have to train more than everyone else is willing to train.
What's your philosophy behind business and how were you able to survive for so long?
You have to.
Today, we are stepping into the world of discipline, resilience, and mastery with Master Guerrero. As an entrepreneur, he leads his own Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school. He's a top coach for the USA team. His daughter is ranked number 7 in world wrestling. He's instructed members of the military. He's trained with legends like the Gracie family and received his black belt from Rigan, Machado, and Santos. He is the definition of a true warrior. Please welcome Master Guerrero. Peace and power.
Wow, thank you for that amazing introduction.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for, coming through. I know you're a busy man. We really appreciate you, brother.
I'm very, very happy and so honored to be here.
Indeed, indeed. I want the people to know who is in the building right now. Can you discuss and break down some of your accomplishments?
So I'm a 4th degree black belt in ninjutsu under world champion Grandmaster Eugene David Floyd. I also received my 5th degree black belt from Master Rigan Machado and Professor Santos. Also, I'm a USA coach for hand-to-hand combat and sambo. I'm one of 6 certified coaches in the country. And I just been doing jiu-jitsu and loving it and been doing different martial arts. And I just been having a great time. I run my own facility. So I have a facility in West Orange, New Jersey. It's called No Limit Martial Arts. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I love to coach and I love to teach.
I love that. I appreciate the fact that your message is not only about defending yourself physically, but also building your mind. And with that being said, how are you able, or how were you able to be successful in so many things? You're a successful entrepreneur. Your school is amazing. You have this resume of these martial arts that you're proficient at. If I open your mind up and I look for a philosophy, what would that philosophy of success be?
One of the things that helped me out is I'm a veteran. I served in Iraq, United States Marine. So being in the United States Marine, that's helped me tremendously with having a mindset of learning how never to give up, being in a very tough situation and knowing how to get out of it. A lot of it has to do with my upbringing, growing up in Newark. And, growing up in Newark, you got to be a little bit tough. So you got to be tough to be able to get things. So I think that having the mentality of growing up in Newark and being a Marine and all those high standards you have to have following those different things, I think that's helped my mindset tremendously and making me overcome challenges because, the way to success is you have to learn how to overcome challenges.
Indeed. There's so many people come from similar situations, right? Come from the Newark or they come from the hood, but for some reason they fall victim to the streets. How were you able to escape those traps? Like, what is it about you that you come from that neighborhood, but you were able to supersede the circumstances?
I think early on in life, being exposed to martial arts at a very young age and seeing the direction that a lot of my friends went to, a lot of family members, and seeing that there was not much to inspire from. And I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I knew I wanted to own my own martial arts school. I didn't think I was going to be able to do both things, but I did know that I wanted something greater than what I had. I would watch Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and I would watch this, and I'm like, man, imagine I could get there, or imagine I can do something. Imagine I could do something different than what everyone else has done. If I could just be different, if there's something that I could accomplish, is it possible? It has to be possible. There's other people that have done it that's come from a similar background. Why not me? Is what I thought. And that's what I think helped me in guiding me and having that focus and knowing that I wanted something more than what I had.
You know, it's interesting. I've interviewed many people. I've read over 400 books, mainly focusing on personal development. And so I like to always highlight the universal principles. And one thing that I observed in what you were saying is this desire for more, but also understanding that there's also the possibility to achieve more. So, number one, how old were you when you had these dreams?
Probably I started martial arts when I was 4. I said the dreams probably like around maybe 10 or 11.
Yeah. So where would you say that desire came from?
I had a really tough upbringing, and I just had a desire to want something different. And I knew there had to be something else out there. Being on welfare, not being able to have the sneakers I wanted, not being able to be able to buy a car when I was out of age, not being able to have so many different things, living in a small two bedroom apartment, sharing a room with my brother. I knew that there was something else. I knew there was something more.
Hmm. Yeah. So that's amazing, and thank you for again for the contributions. Because if you didn't have that desire, then think about all the other people that wouldn't have been blessed from your contribution. When it comes to desire, when it comes to discipline, how were you able to merge the two into actionable steps?
Really good. Merging in which way?
A lot of people want more, they want to be more, right? But they don't have the discipline to actually turn it into actionable steps. So walk us through that process and how you were able to develop that type of discipline and fortitude to carry out your vision, basically.
Well, being in love with martial arts, you have to have a commitment, right? And my martial arts instructor, Grandmaster Eugene David Floyd, who has a school called Ninja University in Irvington, he was a world champion, and he was really successful in the martial arts industry as far as competing in tournaments. And he just gave us this mindset when I was really young. Is like when I would go to a tournament, he would say the day before the tournament, I want you to make space on top of your bureau for your first place trophy. When you get to the tournament, I want you to walk up to the first place trophy, and I want you to touch that trophy, and I want you to picture it. When you go get ready to compete, I want you to like look at the person and think in your head, man, you don't belong here with me. Now, what is it gonna take to get to that first place trophy? You gotta train every day. You gotta exercise. You gotta do the best you can. You gotta train. We were training at the best school at the time, so I think that helped out a lot because that kind of started the journey. Realizing that if I want to be good, I have to train with the best. I have to train more than everyone else is willing to train, and that's what's going to give me that competitive edge. And I think that started to get my mind focused on what is it that I needed to do to become more than I was at that moment. And I realized that everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, you, I, Jay-Z, everybody has the 24 hours in a day. It depends on what you do with those 24 hours. That's going to make you different.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think that, at that age, a lot of people, they focus too much on sleep, and they focus on partying, but I try to like focus on those things that are going to help me to get to to where I wanted to go.
Yeah, that's profound wisdom right there. And you show proof through your ways and actions. What advice would you give a young man who comes from similar backgrounds, who has a vision, not sure which direction to go to, because you were blessed with the martial arts exposure. So I'm assuming your parents maybe exposed you to
Yep.
it. Yeah. So what advice would you give to a young person who feels stuck? Like I actually have a young man that I mentor who's 21 years old, and he's not really sure which direction to go to. And I've been working with him. So if you can take an avatar, somebody who's in their early 20s and not sure which direction they want to go to in life, what words would you share with them?
Does he have a career that he wants to follow?
No.
So what I would suggest is personal development books. I think personal development books, and then we have YouTube. We didn't have YouTube when I was growing up or when you were growing up. We didn't have that. So there's so much free information that's out there. So I would just follow who are the top motivational speakers, right? I love Les Brown. I love Tony Robbins. I love Eric Thomas. But a lot of this information you can get on YouTube. You can buy a book, a couple dollars. You can go to Amazon, buy a book and start reading and start working on the personal development part. I think through the personal development part, I think that's going to be able to start that journey. And then who are your friends? Who are the people that you hang out with, right? So even though I was on this journey and I was focused, there was times that I wasn't really on the path that I should have been on. But I noticed through the years, I mean, my mother would always tell you, tell me who you hang with and I'll tell you who you are. So yeah, I hung around with some knuckleheads and I was a knucklehead for a little bit. Once I started to change my circle and the circle around me, and you have to have, like they say that your net worth is determined by your network. And I think that's so important. So I like to not be the smartest person in the room. I like to be around people that are overachievers, that people that want more, and that if I make a mistake, that they'll tell me, hey, listen, you screwed up. You know what I mean? I want someone to tell me that. Because if they don't tell me that, that means that they're not really my friend. If I make a mistake and it's like, yeah, you know what, you good, man. That's all right. You'll be fine. That's not a real friend. So I think that your circle is really, really important. I think personal development. I think whenever you have a chance and you're in your car, I call it mobile university. Put something on. Listen to something consistently. If you listen to something consistently, that's going to start to focus a change on you. And then you're going to start seeing things different because things do take a while, right? I believe there's no such thing as an overnight success, right? Sometimes I'll have people that tell me, oh man, you're lucky. You have a nice house. You have a nice car. Oh man, you're lucky, man. You have all these employees working for you. I'm lucky. No, when I decided to make changes in my life, guess what? You guys made fun of me. When I used to walk around with my karate magazines, you guys made fun of me. When I decided to, when I was 16, 17 years old, I was working. I was paying $100, $200 a lesson for martial arts. Guess what? You were buying, $200 Jordans. I made different decisions. So making those different decisions brought me in a different path. So I think that if that young man's working, we want to make sure that he gets working. Let him, take some of that money that he's making, and you have to invest in yourself first. If you invest in yourself first, and then he could try different things and talk to people, but he doesn't know what career he wants, but the self-help books will start to guide him there. And then once he finds what career he wants, now he has to find that person that's already successful in that career path and then model that person. And then find out because success leaves clues. So follow what that person does and do the same things. And guess what? You should pretty much have similar or even better results.
Powerful. And just so that y'all know, and I got a receipt in the form of a picture, we actually saw each other at an Eric Thomas personal development speaking engagement. So he's not just talking, he really lives what he's talking about because I seen him there and I got the picture to prove it. So that's great. That's actually very, very profound. How are you able to manage a business? You're a family man. Your daughter's ranked number 7 in world wrestling. So you have children or just a daughter?
So I have a 22-year-old daughter, and then I have a 6-year-old son.
Okay. So you're a father, you're a family man, you're a husband, you have a business, you have employees, you're a martial artist, you're teaching seminar, you're traveling, you're teaching seminars. How are you able to manage all of this? What's your structure of time management, or what's your philosophy behind time management?
Time management, something I still struggle with to this day.
So
But
this is great. Hold your thought, because I want to see, like, even with all the accolades and everything he's achieved, he's telling you it's not easy. He still struggled with stuff himself.
I think that you have to have two categories. You got to figure out what's important and what's urgent, and you got to take care of those things that are urgent first. And I also think that there's one of my really good black belts, and one of my top black belts, and he's been with me 20 years. Ty, he always tells me delayed gratification, and I think that makes so much sense because everybody wants everything right now and today. So I have to think about, I section my life in 5 years. What do I want to accomplish in the next 5 years? Now, what are the things I'm doing today that's going to help me get there in 5 years? So I think that's really, really important, because what happens is that you have a to-do list and that list gets longer and longer and longer, and then you don't accomplish those things and you feel like a failure. However, if you have your goals set out for 5, 10 years from now, and whatever you're doing, are you getting closer to your goal? Or are you getting further away from your goal? So you have to do those things that are going to help you get closer to your goal. And learning that first, learning how to manage myself first, and always learning how to try to manage other people as well, or try to influence other people as well. First, I have to learn how to manage myself. Once I learn how to manage myself, with the help of my wife, with the help of my kids, with the help of my team that work with me, we all have similar goals, and having that team around me, it does help out a lot. Even though I started everything on my by myself, but as I started to grow, then my wife came, she started helping me out, and she's again a tremendous help. I wouldn't be where I'm at today. God knows if I'd be alive, it wasn't for her. But I think that's what's helped out with managing time and managing expectations. But I you have to know where you want to go, and you have to realize that not everything comes right away. It does take time.
Yeah, I want to highlight the fact that this man mentioned his wife and put her on a high pedestal, because I think that it's also important for us men to make sure that we're choosing the right partners, because a lot of us are byproducts of dysfunctional homes, or we have multiple baby mothers and all of that. And I get it. Listen, I have two baby mothers. So, but we have to do better. And having someone that we are married to, having a partner, makes a huge difference in life. And as this man said, even in business. So walk us through that journey. You mentioned that you started a business by yourself, right? How have you been able to create a successful business? What's your philosophy behind business, and how were you able to survive for so long?
Well, now having a business and being successful at business, it is probably one of the hardest things that you can do. It is really, really tough because again, people think, oh, you're your own boss. You pick and choose what hours you work. No, it's not like that. It's really not like that. I When I started my business, I had a full-time job. So I worked at a warehouse, 7:30 to 3:30. On top of the 7:30 3:30, I also taught martial arts. Well, I taught martial arts Monday through Saturday. On top of that, I also did bouncing. I bounced on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday night. And I did this for probably worked 80, 100 hours for about, still probably doing it now, probably doing a little less hours, but you have to put in the time. You have to really put in the time. I started my business in 1999, and when I started my business, it was supposed to be like I was working at a nonprofit organization. That's why I got my foot in the door. So they gave me a place and said, "Here, we have a place for you. All you got to do is teach martial arts. We're gonna provide you with mats. We're gonna provide you with funding for. We're gonna give you a salary. We're gonna give you health benefits." And I got $150 in the beginning and never saw a dime after that. So I kept pouring money and pouring money, pouring money because I know I needed to get this place going. Come to find out years later that someone was stealing that money. But anyway, it was a blessing and a curse because as my heart was broken, it kind of forced me to open up my own business. So I had a place that I was teaching at, and I was teaching it totally for free. And I was supposed to be getting some help, and I wasn't getting the help, but it kind of forced me to open up my own school. So I think that in itself, it gave me a boost because something bad happened to me, and that's what forced me to open up a business. I started this in 1999. From 1999 to 2005, I knew martial arts, and I thought I was pretty good at martial arts. I had no idea what I was doing in business, no idea whatsoever. So the business bled. I was $120,000 in debt. I was forced to sell my house. And but I was lucky that the market had went up so much that I had made 200,000 from my house. So making it 200,000, I paid $120,000 in debt, and I took the rest of that money and I just invested it in learning the business. Because again, being a martial artist is totally different than knowing how to run a business. So from that was in 2005. From 2005 to now, I haven't stopped, man. I've been trying to go to as many seminars as possible, whether it's personal development, whether it's learning business. I try to surround myself with like the top producers of martial artists in the world, and I try to stay connected to them. I go out to dinner with them often. I have them on my phone. We're always consistently talking to each other, educating from each other, and always trying to learn, because in business, what works in marketing 4 or 5 months ago changes. So you have to kind of be on top of the game. You have to continue to go to personal development seminars because it's easy to fall off. So I think personal development is such a huge part, because if you don't have that aspect of personal development, it's not going to give you the discipline to deal with the stuff that you deal with in business. Because in business is very, very hard. However, it's also very rewarding, but you got to be willing to put the time in there. And like I said, now things have changed now, because my daughter, Sandy Guerrero, right? She was the first female or male to begin a state champion in our town of West Orange. She was the first one to do it. Then 4 years later, this year, she became the first person in the whole Northeast to win a national championship in Iowa against a girl from Iowa. She's a Division III school. She beat a girl from the Division I school. So she was able to accomplish that. Then we went to the World Championship. She got 7th place. Right now she's competing for Team Puerto Rico. Actually, in a couple of weeks, we'll be heading for Puerto Rico. She's gonna try to make the national team again. So she's got to compete. But now her goal is to become an Olympian. So everything I do now has to refocus to help her achieve that goal. So I think, like I said, in business, you have to be willing. You got to have a hard head. You got to be really stubborn. Stubborn meaning that you cannot give up. You got to go. And it takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of discipline, and you are going to get your heart broken, but it's part of the process.
Wow. Powerful. I hope y'all really see this man has been in business since 1999.
Yep.
And he's giving you gems right now. This is experience. How many years is that from 1999 to now? That's 25 years?
25 years.
25 years of business in this episode. Soak it in, family. So let's talk about why BJJ. Why Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? You know, you're proficient in many different disciplines. What made you focus on Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
Good point. So I started, like I said, I've done jiu-jitsu, I've done boxing, kickboxing, and I started that when I was 5. 1993, this thing comes out called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. A little skinny man named Royce Gracie. And when he was competing, competing against people way bigger than him. And I was always brought up striking. And I always thought that if somebody grabs you, that was kind of a soft way of fighting, right? Because I was always used to punching somebody, punching or kicking somebody.
Indeed, like in the hood, they'd be like, "Why are you grabbing me? Why are you grabbing me?"
Exactly, right? So, oh no, break them up. No, use the hands, right? So, watching Royce Gracie win the first UFC, the second UFC, the third UFC, and then the fourth, actually, he didn't win the third one, but he won the fourth one, and then he beat my favorite fighter. There's a guy named Keith Hackney. He was a Kempo guy, and Keith Hackney was hit him. I was like, yeah, beat that guy up. And after Royce Gracie beat him, I was like, you know what? There's got to be something about what that guy's doing. And that's pretty much what my journey started. I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 95. I was very blessed that my first seminar was with Rigan Gracie, who's considered the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world, right? And Rigan Gracie, I met Royler Gracie. I met Renzo Gracie there, Saulo Ribeiro, the whole big part of the Gracie family. And that's kind of when I started my journey. And then in that seminar, they were willing to go with anybody. Hey, you want to try it? Let's go. And that confidence, I've never seen that in the martial arts. And within 1 year of me training martial arts, I had other martial arts instructors that used to train me that had way more experience than me, and I could tap them. I could make them tap. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is powerful. This is 1 year of training. Imagine what happens when I continue to do this. Yeah. So I think that is what really had me start my love for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Wow. And so you saw it as like the thing to focus on.
Yes.
What about the nature? So I'm a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I get it. So, but I'm in conversations with a whole bunch of different types of people who study different things. And a lot of naysayers say like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wouldn't work in a street fight. They say stuff like, okay, well, you're training on a mat. Or they're saying you have a gi on, or you're barefooted, or things like that. And I definitely have bear witness that there's things like say spider guard or turtle, right? Things there's obviously things that you wouldn't use in a street fight for sure. So what would you say to the naysayers that say Brazilian jiu-jitsu won't actually work in a real street fight where there's cement?
So like I told you, I worked doing security as a bouncer. So I've used Brazilian Jiu Jitsu plenty of times in a street situation. And the gi is very important because nobody walks around the street bare chested. It's very rare, maybe in the summer, but in the beach. But for the most part, you have a t-shirt on, you have a hoodie on, you have a sweater on, and those are all things I can grab you, I can choke you with it. So having that experience of actually having combat in real life situations and learning what actually works. People do say, yeah, against multiple attackers. Yes, of course. So, I'm not gonna sit there and be rolling with someone on the ground if I don't have to. The whole purpose of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is to learn how to defend yourself if you're in the worst possible position. Someone's on top of you. You happen to be on the ground. Now, if I could take somebody down, I take them down, and I have a couple other people. Yes, I know how to strike too, so I can use those different things. I believe that nowadays you have to know more than Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is the foundation of martial arts. I feel like the foundation of mixed martial arts. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is very, very important because you can learn how to defeat somebody who's bigger and stronger than you. Not only that, but if I get into a fight and which has happened to me before, I've punched drunk people before. I have punched people who are high with no effect. However, a choke puts everybody out, whether they're high, whether they're drunk. So the power of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I've seen it myself. I've also studied Sambo too. And Sambo, I believe, is very similar to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but very different. A heavy influence on takedowns, very similar to Judo, but they have their striking as well. So I think that continuing, not just doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, working with Sambo, training in wrestling, I think the combination of those different things, the more you trained, the better chances you are surviving a street situation. I've used it in the military. I've trained Marines. I've trained different. I've worked with customs agents. I've worked with police officers. So just being able to use it, and there's just so many videos you can find on YouTube that shows you the power of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I think it pretty much speaks for itself and how effective it is.
Indeed, indeed. I know definitely people want to know how was it training with the Gracie family, the legendary Gracie family who started and pioneered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as we know it in America. How was that experience?
So like I said, I was really, really blessed when I started doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because my first well, I've trained a year just watching videotapes of the Gracies, right? And then, so from 94 to 95, I started doing like videotapes. And 96 is when I did the first Hicks and Gracie seminar. And then from there, I started training at Henzo Gracie Academy in New York. And then I would train with David Adif, who he right now he's a black belt under Hoyler Gracie. And I trained with David Adif and Hoyler Gracie. And I've been able to train with them for a very, very long time. Throughout that time of training with Hoyler Gracie, I've also had the benefit of training with Hiron and Henner Gracie, which I think that I use a lot of my teaching methodologies to try to follow because they've had a really big impact in my life. Being able to train and being so close to that family is been amazing, right? In 2005, I started training with their cousins, which are the Machado brothers. I met Professor Marco Santos, and I would train with him. He had a school in New York, and then he connected me with his instructor, which is Rigan Machado. So I would train with Marco Santos. I would train with Rigan Machado. I would go to California. They would come to me. I had a chance to train with all the other four brothers. You got John Machado, Jacques Machado, Carlos Machado, Haja Machado. So being able to train with them and having that connection with them, like I said, they're cousins of the Gracies. Being with them so long is it has been amazing that I've been blessed to be so close to the source of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Just like this last summer, we were going to the World Championships for my daughter to compete, and we used to always go to California. We stop at I go see Master Higa Machado. I go see whichever Machados that are around, and then I go to the Gracie Academy and I go train to this day. And my daughter got to train with Hito and Gracie. Through the years he's been to my school. So I think I've been very blessed to be so close to the source.
Yeah, that's great. What Brazilian jiu-jitsu lessons have translated off the mat for you?
Being uncomfortable, right? So in life, you're gonna be uncomfortable. So you have somebody on side mount, which is somebody has their chest on top of you, and learning how to deal with that situation with someone that's bigger than you on top of you is, I think, it's a life lesson, because success leaves clues, right? And in success, you're going to be in really bad situations. So the more you learn how to navigate out of situations, the better you are. And this is the way we can adapt the lessons of jujitsu to life, right? Because you're going to be bad at situations. They're going to be situations where your arm may be about to be snapped. There's going to be, which I've gotten my arm broken a few times, right? Um, there's going to be times where you're about to get put to sleep. There's going to be time where you have a person who's half your size, tying you up like a pretzel. So I think that learning those situations and learning how to deal with those situations and overcoming those situations helps you tremendously in life.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting you say that because I always tell people one of the main lessons that I learned, very, very similar to yours. I remember at one time I was getting choked, and all I was able to do was just tuck in my chin a little bit more and just put my hand here. That's all I was able to do. And being from a very bad situation to now just a bad situation was just like a better situation. And like you said, that's just life. Sometimes all you have is from going from to worse to bad. And you're just waiting for an opportunity. That's what I was doing, sort of waiting for to see if I could get some leverage, or if he made a mistake in a movement, or if the time ran out. And I know in real, so, people could say, oh, in life, you don't have any clock. I get it. But just learning from that analogy that sometimes you go from worse to bad to maybe a little better. And that's just the way life really works in real time. So it's about being learning to be uncomfortable in those challenging moments and having the proper mindset, right?
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Because, so, like I said, sometimes when people say, "Oh, this happened to me. This happened to me." No, it didn't happen to you. It happened for you. Like, even those bad things that like I said, growing up in Newark, you think that it's a disadvantage, but like I tell people, it's actually, for me, I think it's an advantage, because I know that I can go to the hood. I can, man, be totally comfortable, and guess what? I could be in a corporate environment, be totally comfortable, and that's a blessing that I think a lot of people who never had that upbringing, they don't have that advantage. So I feel like I can navigate my way in different situations, and being street smart and being aware, I think it helps tremendously. So I think that it's just a big advantage of learning how, take something that you may think is bad, and there's a lesson in there. If those things don't happen to you, if you're not put in those bad situations, then you're not gonna learn how to deal with it. And life is the same way. So learning how to deal with a situation, learning how, when someone's trying to choke you out and someone's trying to put you in a really bad situation, and learning how to get out. And sometimes, yeah, you could go from, like I said, worse to bad, or sometimes you could go from worse to good, right? You do a reversal, now you're on top, right? Or maybe the guy's putting so much pressure, and now they're tired, right? Now they're tired. Oh, and now it's my turn.
Right.
So I think that, I think those things it's just such a blessing for life.
And it's something that I'm observing from your mindset too, and it's a reflection of the accolades and the training that you have, is the adaptability. Like you even mentioning, like being able to be in the hood, but also being able to be in a corporate world as well. And you started off as a striker, but you're also proficient in Sambo and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So there's that adaptability that whatever life throws at you, you have a set of tools to be able to handle it. Yeah.
I agree 100%. I mean, having adaptability, you gotta, like in business, there's so many things you have to learn, right? You have to know how to attract customers. You got to know how to do marketing, right? You learn money management. You learn people management. There's so many things that you learn that you would, that it's not taught in traditional school, right? You don't have those opportunities as much to learn. Like those things that you learn, you got to know so many different aspects: how to retain customers, how to attract new customers. Again, how to do marketing, how to do and certain times you have to do things that you're not really that comfortable with. Like I hate paperwork, but guess what? I have to do it, right? There's a lot of things that as I build my team, then I could take those things that I don't like doing, I could give it to somebody else. But in the beginning when I first started my school, I did a little bit of everything. And then my wife, she started helping me out, and those things that I'm not good at, she would do good at that stuff. And then one thing I learned about in business is you don't have to be good at everything. However, you need to have somebody that can be good at those things you're not good at. But like, some people say, "Oh, I'm not good. I'm not that good, that computer savvy," but my team is, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable in my own skin. I know what I'm good at. So sometimes people focus too much on their weaknesses. No, give those weaknesses to somebody else. In the beginning, yeah, you got to wear all the hats, right? But there's a book that it teaches you how to, in the beginning you wear all the hats, but you separate your business different pieces. In the beginning, you do all the pieces.
E-Myth?
E-Myth Revisited. There you go. I like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's it. Yeah.
That
So you
book,
know what
I
I'm
mean,
talking about. The
indeed.
E-Myth Revisited. So yeah, Michael Gerber. That book is fantastic because in the beginning you wear all the hats, right? And then little by little, you start assigning those hats to other people. But in business, in the beginning, I used to have a limiting belief that I was not good enough because I wasn't good at certain things. So it used to make me feel bad. Like like I told you, I didn't graduate college. I went to college. I didn't graduate college. So I was always worried about how I spoke. And I spoke with a little bit of slang. I couldn't enunciate words correctly. And then I realized, like, it's fine as long as you have a drive and you're really interested and you have that drive to become successful. You're gonna become successful. And take all those things you're not good at and have someone else do it, and just get better at what you're already good at. I mean, there's certain things that, yeah, you got to learn a little bit about everything. Like I wasn't really good at managing money, and then I learned how to become really good at managing money. But how do you become good at something? You have to immerse yourself into it. You got to like study, so you can start to have those, because I'm sure I know the way you grew up, the way I grew up, I didn't have a parent with $1 million, right? With lots of money. I didn't have a parent to teach me how to run a business. I didn't have any family members at that time that were close to me that ran a business. So I had to pretty much do everything on my own. I had to learn all that on my own. I didn't have people that would tell me, "Oh man, you could do this, you could do that." No, they would tell you, "Oh, go to school and get a good job." That's what everybody tells you. Go to school and get a good job, right? And then, through the business where I started to learn, oh man, there's things that I'm doing that, you know what? Just because this guy wears a shirt and tie, it doesn't mean that he's more successful than me. Man, I know people that cut grass that are super more successful than people that work in the office. So as long as you love what you do, you're passionate about what you're gonna do, then guess what? You have to figure it out. You have to work. Certain things that you have to get good at, you have to learn how to do those things. And as you learn those things, then you're gonna be able to grow.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you finally didn't allow your insecurities to get in the way. And it speaks to how many of us, a lot of times we really do get in our own way with our insecurities, that we magnify ourselves. And I had a similar experience. So I did go to college. I have my associate's degree. And I remember when I got to college, it was just like this realization that just because someone spoke better than me, because like I'm from the hood, so I spoke with slang. I still speak with slang. And I realized it was a subconscious thing where I thought if someone spoke proper, it just meant that they were smart. And I learned when I went to college, and now we're in a classroom and we're debating that doesn't mean that you're smart just because you speak well. You were taught how to speak well. That's it. Now it can be a byproduct of it, but what I'm saying is that it doesn't always mean that.
It doesn't. It
What,
doesn't at all.
what do you think? Both of us come from the hood. We come from the bottom. You from Newark, me from Patterson. What does our community need to succeed?
So our community, like what you're doing right now, right? This podcast that the amazing work that you're doing, your videos that you're doing. I mean,
Thank
you
you.
you look like us, right? And people like us, the best way that we can, I think, help our community is try to get into our community, right? Try to do podcasts, try to do books, try to do community outreach. I do the best I can when I have the time. I like to go to different schools and I like to speak to the kids because I feel like, because I've been through what I've been through, I feel like I can have a positive impact. And I within my school, as I do my martial arts lessons, I feel like the martial arts is just a vehicle for me to help people. In other words, so I'm a psychologist. I'm a money manager for people. I help people with alcoholism. I help people with who are into drugs.
Wow.
There's so many different things, but I do it through martial arts, right? So I think that you have to find a way that you can impact people And whenever you have that opportunity to drop some gems, like what we're doing today, like, we're talking about my experience, right? And there's probably people like me, and there's people that have accomplished a lot more than me. But how do we get the word out, and how can we impact people and show them that, yeah, just because you're from this area doesn't mean, I'm telling you, it's a superpower. I believe that being from the hood is a superpower because it teaches you, like, man, you know what? We've been through a lot. I never forget when I was in boot camp. And again, United States Marine Corps boot camp is one of the toughest boot camps in the world. And I never forget when the drill instructor started yelling at me, I'm thinking in my head, like, man, you ain't gonna do nothing to me that mother hasn't done to me already. Like, there's nothing, like, you don't know how I grew up. There's nothing you're gonna do to me that's gonna break me. Because I've been through so much growing up. I've been through, like, watching uh domestic violence like in front of my face, whether it's with my parents or what, I would stay at my cousin's house, and then my cousin, she used to get beat with her from her husband because he was an alcoholic. So he used to beat her. I was 10 years old, 11 years old. I couldn't do much. Going through that, losing friends to, friends that got murdered, right? And going through things, getting jumped, getting into so many fights. Like, the typical kid goes to school and they're stressed out about how they do good in school. If they got an A, I had to worry about what block I had to walk down. I went to Barringer High School in Newark. Man, somebody got shot in our hallway, right? We had a couple people that got killed, while they were that were in our high school. Like, this is not, I thought it was normal. As I moved on to different areas, I realized, man, I didn't have a normal childhood. But you know what I mean? Like that stuff is tough.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the lack of masculinity in the homes is like a plague in our community. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So I believe that, you have to have you have to know where your place is, and then your significant other has to have their place too, right? So I think that nowadays, you think about when we grew up, right? We had 80-foot tall slides, right, that were metal, and then you fall into concrete. Nowadays, slides are like 8 foot wide, they're like 4 feet tall, and you fall to the ground and it's soft. So what do we expect the kids to be like, right? What they used to say to us, right? Sticks and stones may break your bones, and
Or it's never gonna hurt,
now it's
never
like,
hurt you?
oh, don't say that. You're gonna hurt his feelings. Like, you think about the way the kids are brought up. Like, even though my kids live really well compared to the way I live, right? They have their own room. We have a home, we have a pool, and not to try to impress you, but to impress upon you that just because they have those things, guess what? My kids, they train 6 days a week. They have to work out, right? My kids, they train wrestling, they train jiu-jitsu, right? My kids been working since they were young, right? My daughter's been working. My daughter, she's one of the head kids instructors in my school. My son does ROTC. He's an instructor at the school. At 16 years old, he's 10 times a better instructor than I was. But I try to make them work. I make them save money. I make them invest their money. So I could give them a lot more financially, but sometimes I don't give them too much because I also don't want to spoil them. I have a lot of friends that do everything for their kids, and their kids are spoiled. So even though they didn't grow up like I did, I try to do a little bit of things to try to give them a little bit type of struggle so they can feel what their place is in the world.
I love that. I love that. It reminds me of that story of there was a I believe it was a bird. I don't know if it was a bird or a butterfly that just I remember just it just came out of the cocoon. It was a butterfly, and a person saw the butterfly attempting to fly. So what it did is it helped it, but in helping, it actually made the butterfly die because the struggle was actually the when butterflies struggle to flap their wings, that's actually what strengthened the wings so that they can fly. And because this butterfly got so much help, it didn't develop the strength, it couldn't fly, and then it died. Totally chopped up the story, but the main point is understanding that struggle makes us better. And it's a good thing.
Yeah, like I said, it's nowadays, it's like, again, you can't talk to kids a certain way, right? It's like the way society is now, it is tough. So these kids are becoming weak, and that's why I personally believe that these kids have this, they're doing the mass shootings, and kids are depressed and they have anxiety. Like, what do you have anxiety about? You don't have no bills. Like, you want to have anxiety once you have some bills, but if every time that they're feeling upset and then you coddle them, So I'll give you an example of my daughter, right? So my daughter competed in a tournament one time. She was representing Team New Jersey, and then there was another team that's Pennsylvania. So when she had her match, she lost. So she lost, and then she went to the corner. She started crying. All right, rightfully so. She lost, right? And so I'm looking at her, and she's crying. 5 minutes passed, she's crying. 10 minutes passed, and I got pissed. So I went up to her. I was like, "Listen, on the front of your singlet, it doesn't say Sandra Guerrero. It says New Jersey. You have a whole team out there." I said, "You got 5 minutes to get out of your feelings and go over there and cheer your team on." Because I also don't want her to be happy that she lost. Like, it's okay. Like, you don't want it to, it's okay that you, no, it ain't okay that you lose, right? Now, if you're trying your best and then you lose, okay, that's okay. As long as you're trying your best. But again, get your 5 minutes, get over your feelings, and go get back there and be there for your team. Don't just be all about you.
That's right.
So, these parents are like, "Oh my God, he doesn't want to take class, or he wants to quit." Or sometimes, I deal with it all the time in my school, where parents want to bring their kid. They're bringing them kids for discipline. They're bringing them for respect. But yet, as soon as a kid has a little bit of adversity, right, they get thrown a little bit too hard, and now they want to pull them out of class. Don't pull them out of class. You're teaching your kid how to become a quitter. Don't teach them how to become a quitter. My kids had two options when it came to martial arts. You go in a good mood or you go in a bad mood. Like, there was no, like, that was it. Those are the two options you had. And my son, I like to always say this about my son. Um, and a lot of people, they'll tell you about this story. My son wanted to quit martial arts from the ages of 3 to the ages of 11. From 11 to like 15, he would just go through the movements, right? At 11, he realized no matter how much I complain, my dad's still taking me to class. And I don't know what happened at 15. Something snapped, and now he loves training. Imagine I would have let him quit.
Wow.
But what would he have become if I would have let him quit? So in my household, I forced my kids to invest money. I forced my kids to go to business seminars with me. My kids been going to business seminars since they're 11 years old. I don't ask them. It's the way I tell them. So I don't believe in there's no back and forth in my house. There's forth. I'm telling you what to do. You don't know any better, right? That I feel like telling them that you're stupid. You don't know any better. You're still young. You don't know any better. Eventually, the more you force your kids to do certain things, guess what? Oh, don't force your kids. I totally disagree. If it's like, imagine your kid came to you at 7 years old. You know what, Mom? I hate math. I don't want to go to school no more. Are you gonna be like, hey, you know what? Hey, Marcos, hey, Sandy. Hey, you don't like school? Don't go to school. You're not gonna do that. So something as strong as martial arts. So there's three things at my house you have to do. You got to do martial arts. You got to know how to read and write, and you got to swim. Everything else is optional. And yes, I force my kids to do wrestling too. I think those things are important, and my kids know how to punch too, so they know how to strike as well. I think those things are super, super important, right? And I also am forcing my kids not to be in debt when they graduate high school. Well, my kids are not in debt anyway. They got more money than probably most people because I'm forcing them. Every time you get money, they some of it away. You give it to me, and I'll put it away for you. So they have investment accounts, and I'm teaching them how to invest. I'm teaching them how to be stronger.
Listen, for your children, when you watch this interview, I'm letting you know you are blessed to have this man as your father. Seriously. Yeah, man, that's great. That's great. Speaking about struggle, what has been your biggest struggle in martial arts? And what has been your biggest struggle in business? And how did you overcome it?
My biggest struggle in martial arts. I think martial arts in general is a struggle, right? Showing up when you don't want to show up, right? Your body's aching, right? Going through injuries. Injuries is a struggle. So I broke this part of my arm twice. I have 12 screws and two rods in my hand here. See, this is clearly got metal here. Um, I hurt my neck. I have herniated disc. I have I've herniated disc. I have bulging disc. I had issues with my knees. I think that the biggest struggle for me has been overcoming injuries. But if I wouldn't do, I'm still passionate about doing martial arts, and I always looked at having an injury as like it's just delaying me to train, right? In business, I think in business, it's a constant struggle, right? there's always struggles, right? How do I become a better leader for my school, right? How do I get people to I always try to get the best out of the people that work with me, and I want them to be good. And sometimes I push them and I struggle sometimes if I feel that they don't see in what I'm doing for them, right? And that happens with kids too. Like I look at the people that work with me just like I look at my kids, right? Because you can want so much for them, but they have to want it themselves, right? And, I know being an employee myself, I never had that. I never had someone to teach me about saving money. I had no one teaching me about what to do with my money. I had no one telling me about how to have a good credit score or how to save up for a house, how to buy a house. So I took all those experiences that I had that I didn't have and I try to give it to the people that I work with, right? So I think that the struggle is sometimes is I feel am I am I am I being am I being the right leader for them, right? Are they seeing that I really, really care about them, right? Because if I care about them, they're gonna be happier and I want them to be happier in life. So I feel like that's always a struggle. And then trying to keep up with marketing and keeping up with different things that are happening. And I think that's it's a struggle. But I feel like in business it's always gonna be a struggle. So I think that business is always a struggle. So but I think I would say that was probably the biggest struggle that I can say.
Amazing. So there's something special in your name, Guerrero. And I know I'm Dominican, so guerra means war. So your last name means warrior. So it's interesting that you are this person and literally your last name means warrior. With that being said, somebody from our audience has the question, can courage be taught or is it something that's either in you or not?
I think courage could be taught if you want it bad enough, right? So I feel like with the martial arts, I get kids that are afraid to do soccer, are afraid to do football. Believe it or not, they're like afraid to do certain things, and they'll come to me. I had a little girl that used to train with me. Her name is Jordan, and she came in with. I think she came in, signed up. She had this little dress, and she started training with me. And then like a few years later, man, she got confidence, and she signed up to play football. She signed, and then when she went to sign up in a tutu, like to play football. She wanted to tackle people. So I feel like the martial arts is so powerful in that aspect because, you get people that are afraid to do certain things. And little by little, I think with the proper guidance, you can help them to get courage, right? You can help them to get self esteem. And I don't think there's that many sports that are similar to martial arts that can help give you that. So I think that, little by little, I would say wrestling is like that too. But I feel like with the martial arts, we take kids and we have a nice process where we start them off really, really light. We kind of hold their hands a little bit. And then little by little, we start helping them increase their confidence. So I think courage could be guided. But it just takes a community, right? So if I'm pushing your child, but you're as a parent, you're not pushing your child, then we're not gonna really get there. So if you help me, if I have parents that help me, I could work miracles with kids. But you got to be able to help me with it, right? Because I'll push your kid, but I'm only gonna push your kid in how much the parent allows me and how much that kid allows me. Some kids you got to push them a little bit slower, and some kids you could push them more.
Yeah, you know what I'm getting from what you're saying that maybe the proper word is not teach courage, but it can be cultivated.
Yes, I agree,
Yeah.
100%.
Was your courage natural or was it cultivated on your journey?
I guess a little bit of both, right? I mean, you don't have you don't have a choice to have courage, right? Because you get into fights all the time. So I think that growing up in a place like Newark, the schools that I went to, like you don't really have much of a choice. So you got to learn how to stand up for yourself. So I think that standing up for yourself and then getting used to like when you're doing sparring, you're getting hit, and just getting used to that just makes it a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier to kind of develop that resiliency.
Indeed. I got another question from an audience member. My man Bud from South Force. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Shout out to my man Bud. He wants to know once you achieve the level of black belt, what was your personal mindset for your own training and further growth?
I think black belt is a big responsibility, And I think when I received my black belt, I felt like that's when the learning really started, because now you want to execute the moves, but you want to execute it without using as much energy and much force. And I think that me having a passion of teaching, becoming a black belt, I just wanted to be the best instructor I possibly could be. So I think that, once I achieved my black belt, I just really, really I wanted to represent my instructors very well, all the instructors I've ever had. And I feel that that responsibility, even one of my instructors, Professor Marco Santos, he had moved to Texas. So I felt like, he was like the head person for the Machado brothers in the East Coast. So I felt like, all right, now I'm the head person for like the Rigan Machado and the Machado brothers. So I felt like that's a responsibility that I had to take. So I felt like that was part of the journey.
Yeah, I appreciate about you. Like for me, bro, you're a giant because you take on this integrity about things without being told. Like even that example, like, okay, one of my instructors moved to Texas. All right, I gotta represent. And a lot of times people have to be told that. You took that on. Where does that come from? That inner, just for me, I call it like just a high standard or high quality of a man. Where does that come from? Just having high standards.
I think that's come from my instructors, right? Master Rigan Machado, him and his brothers, they were actually brought here from Chuck Norris, right? So Chuck Norris went to go train with the Gracies, right? And when the Gracies and the Machado brothers trained together, and then they met Chuck Norris, and then Chuck Norris fell in love with the Machado brothers. He brought them here, so they're kind of pioneers in the growth of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in the United States. So seeing how much work they've done, I felt like, looking at that example, I felt like I had to do the same thing or try to do the best I can to have something similar in the East Coast.
Yeah. So many people use the excuse about time. I don't have time. What advice would you offer them?
I'm a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And Arnold Schwarzenegger, he made it plain and simple: sleep faster, right? So it's other words like, again, everybody has 24 hours in a day, right? And if you follow his story, he would work out 5 hours a day, he would work 8 hours a day, and then he would also go to acting classes another 5 hours a day. So he always talks about sleep faster. So again, there's times where I would sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. You have to do what you got to do to become successful, right? If you if you don't, then you can't get mad at not achieving your goals. Whatever it takes, is kind of like, if I go up to you, right, and I tell you that you have to swim for an hour, right? It might be hard for you to do it, and you might not, but I can easily motivate you. If I take a gun and put it to your son's head or your daughter's head and say, if you don't sleep for an hour and shoot your kid, you're gonna swim for an hour. You know what I mean? So you have to have that same type of mindset when you're doing anything in life, right? You want to become successful. What does it take, right? So you got to be doing, I always like to, and it's funny because I don't watch that much sports. However, I'm a big fan of Kobe Bryant, because Kobe Bryant did those extra things, right? He would work out three times a day for hours and hours on the day because he wanted to be better than everyone else. So what is it that you do to become successful? That's where the success is going to come. Like, again, attending the business seminars, right? There's people that I also coach on business myself. There's people that I coach in business myself. But I try to think about, how do I become a better coach, right? How do I become a better father, right? How do I become a better husband, right? How do I become a better martial artist? So just having a desire to become better, that's what's going to give me the edge amongst everyone else.
I love that because if anyone could sit back and be comfortable and say, hey, I accomplished all these things, I can chill now, it's you. And you still have that question inside, how can I be better? And I think that the fact that you had that question at such a very young age and backed it up with action is the reason why you are who you are, and you still got so much more in the tank and will accomplish much more. And even now, we see it translating into your children. So that's amazing, brother. I know that you're into books, you're into personal development. You've mentioned it a few times during this conversation. What is your favorite book and why?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Because I think that learning how to communicate, I think that is so empowering. And the reason why, I mean, there's two books. There's another book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I would say those are my two favorite books. But How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think is so powerful because sometimes, like I remember when I read that book, I went into a diner and the waitress had a bad mood, and I just killed her with kindness, and then, but you don't know what she went through, right? You don't know what her day was like, and just being able to lighten up her day, it'll lighten up my day. So I figured like really learning how to communicate and trying to get your point across. It's really difficult because I guess being a Marine, I'm very direct, right? Being from the hood, we're very direct. But just learning that way how to communicate better, I think that's empowering. So I would tell you that's the best book I've ever read.
I totally agree. And I've taken courses on communication. And as a husband, right? That's, being married is like straight up. That's the mat of learning how to communicate. I think one of the important things, and tell me if you agree, that I've learned to communicate is really being in the other person's world and understanding, if not even understanding, but at least being open to how they view things and not being so judgmental to thinking that your way is the right way, even though your way might be the right way, but understanding that that person has that perspective for a reason. So that's one of the main things that I get, even like I said, being a husband and respecting and validating the things that my wife brings to the table as well as my own, and figuring out how can we now create this harmony within the two worlds. Like, she's from the suburbs, I'm from the hood. You understand what I'm saying? So, just I think the art of communicating is developing that bridge between, multiple minds or two minds. Would you agree?
I agree 100%. Like learning how to communicate is so important because and seeing some like even like through the years I've had different people that work with me, right? And there's times where we didn't see eye to eye, and then I always said to myself, throughout the years, what could I have done better, right? Could I have maybe communicated better? What could like I can't you can't always blame people for things. You got to sit there and say, what could I have done different? So I figured that learning how to communicate and get your point across, you'll have more power to influence people in a positive way. I think that's like golden right there.
One of the things you may appreciate this, one of the things that I learned studying NLP, neuro linguistic programming, is when you're communicating with someone, a lot of times someone may misinterpret what you say, right? And so the natural way, especially where we come from, they'd be like, man, you don't get it, right? It's always the other person. But NLP taught me that no, it's not the other person's responsibility to understand what I'm saying. It's my responsibility to figure out a way to convey my message in the way that they get it. Well, a lot of times, we play the blame game or pointing the finger. So, and to me, that's very empowering and very challenging, especially like when you have children, you're married, you have employees, co-workers, everything, a team, right? It's just figuring how to navigate everybody's way of understanding information, And so I think that communicating is an art. In the nation, I learned that communicating is the bridge between knowing and understanding.
I agree 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
NLP is very powerful. And I think that, we're always brought up saying, do this because, or not even do this because I told you to, rather than the reason I tell you to do this is because this X, Y, and Z. Like what instead of telling my kids, just save money, save money, save money, I say the reason why you want to be financially successful is not because you want to have the cars and you want to have, it's not because of that. So I have one of my really good friends, his son got into a car accident and son got into a car accident, and when he went to take him to the hospital, the doctors was gonna cut off his foot. So right before they went to cut off his foot, he was a martial arts school owner, very successful in business and financially. He reached out to a friend of his who's an orthopedist. He goes, "Before you do anything, I want to see your kid. I want to see the charts." When he saw the charts, he goes, "I could save your child's foot. Normally, I charge 130,000, but I can do it to you for 80,000." He had the funds, he was able to do it. His son runs, jumps, plays. So it's like, the reason we push being, financially successful. And the reason I force that is because if you're ever in that situation, that may be a life or death situation, now you can be able to do it. So I think that that's something that's really important. And when you tell kids, the reason I don't want you to do this is because this could happen. Sometimes just explaining the reason why and because, I think that that can help the person try to understand your point of view a little bit better.
Love that. So 100 years from now, and I hope you live until as long as possible, right? But one day we all gotta go. What would you like your legacy to be as you leave it behind you?
Pretty much that I just help people become the best version of themselves they can. That's always my goal. My goal is to be able to help those that are around me, whether my family, my friends, or my students, become the best version that they can become. I think that for me would be like amazing. Like I know what I've accomplished, but like I want to help my daughter accomplish her dreams, which is become an Olympian, right? I have students that they train with me. I like to help them get their homes, get their houses. But if I could leave an impact on the world, it would be that I was able to help them. I was able to help them in a way that they weren't helped before. I was able to give them something that they maybe didn't have access to.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. And I really want to say, seriously, bro, I am grateful for all the work that you do because you're not only instructing people how to defend themselves, but you're showing them how to think, you're saving lives. And we don't even know how all of those things that they learn coming to your class on the mat will translate to their lives and the lives of others. Children can grow up to become negative, but because of your class, your influence, your team, you can straight just transform all of that into something positive. And you don't even know the trajectory of how far your impact will really reach. So I just want to say that I'm thankful that you're doing that for humanity, that you're doing that as a man, and also representing us in the community we come from. Your story is very inspiring. It's a story of being a warrior from not just fighting, but taking your circumstances and turning it into something greater. And that takes courage, that takes hard work, and just fortitude and perseverance. So just want to thank you for coming. So, do you have any last words that you want to share with our audience?
I would just say, just never give up. Really have a goal in mind. Make sure you're surrounded around people. They're gonna help you achieve that goal. There's gonna be rough times, but just embrace those rough times because they're gonna make you tougher, right? Like they say, no pain, no gain. So I think that if there's something that I can leave upon people, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for my instructors, if it wasn't for my family. I don't believe that there's a such thing as self-made. I believe everybody, has some type of a helping hand. However, if you want to be helped and you do want to move, you gotta, if you want to attract that person who's a millionaire, or attract that friend who's a millionaire, or try to get help, you have to work within yourself first. Because I always grew up thinking that people that are, that are financially successful are mean, and that's not true. There are actually people that are millionaires are like one of the most generous people out there, but they want to help those who they see that are like them. They have that grind, that are willing to do whatever it takes. So if I could leave, some knowledge again, I'm grateful to all the instructors I have. I'm grateful to God. I want to be where I'm at today. I'm grateful to my kids, to my wife, and I'm grateful to what you're doing. Again, you inspire me in what you're doing, and, and,
Thank you.
and I want you to continue to work. And whichever way I can help guide you or help you out in what you're doing, man, I would love to do that. And I'm just honored that you chose me to be here. I'm very, very honored. And I thank you for choosing me to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. It's an honor to have you, and I'm grateful that you sacrifice your time to be here. And you being here is an investment. So it's a mutual bond and a mutual feeling, my brother. Salute. And
Thank you.
again, thank you for everything that you do.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell people how they can find you.
So my school's called No Limit Martial Arts, right? NJKick.com. That's NJKICK.com. Would love to have you, have everyone who wants to come. If you know anybody that's in the area, we're in Essex County. We would love to have everyone there.
Indeed. Yeah. So any social media or anything?
Official Johnny MMA, is my Instagram account. You can find me on Facebook, Johnny Guerrero, No Limit Martial Arts. We have several pages.
There it is. If you found any value in this episode, press subscribe and make sure you share it to everyone who you think will benefit from the story of not only martial arts, but how to be successful in life. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Peace.